See you out that door, baby. Bye, bye, bye. Welcome, citizens of Huskyville. My name is Husky, that's me, and I am here as a professional cat today because we are going to be talking about some very professional topics. Toxicity is a term we tend to throw around quite a lot. We like to use it when something is happening that we don't necessarily like. The word toxic initially describes something poisonous or containing a poisonous material, but it has evolved to be very casual, to the point where people use toxicity to simply degrade something they dislike or an inconvenience. In this video, I want to make sure that I define toxicity in this context. Toxicity in this context goes back to its roots of poisonous material. It means something that causes harm to others. Toxicity in gaming, more specifically in Pokémon UNITE, involves words, actions, or initiatives that actively or passively cause harm to members of the community, including players, observers, staff, and simply enjoyers. As a disclaimer, before I get into this video, I will be discussing some sensitive topics here. If you're uncomfortable with discussions of harm caused to others or even yourself, this video may be one that you want to skip. However, I'll make sure I'm time-stamping specific things and adding in verbal warnings of topics to be discussed in case you'd rather only watch certain parts of this video. Regardless, take care of yourself, and I'm not upset if you need to skip out on this one. Now, hi. My name is Husky, and I'm diving back into the reason I wanted to start YouTube in the first place, to bring research-based content that shouldn't simply be locked behind paywalls of high-impact journals, so we can all benefit from it. So to my friends that want to support me but have no idea what Pokémon UNITE is, you can actually get something out of this one. Also, before I jump into the content of this video, I would like to thank INGAGE GG. I recently partnered with them. They are an organization that is adamant on bringing education to the Pokémon UNITE community, so if you would like to look into them a little bit further or download their new app, you can check the links in my description. Also, to give a shout out to my other organization, Pandicorn Gaming, I've been a caster under them for quite some time, and they've done nothing but help me continue to get opportunities, and is part of the reason that I grow as much as I have in the past couple months. Without further ado, let's begin. Much of the toxicity that exists within gaming culture, including Pokémon UNITE, exists to target underrepresented minority populations. This is not my opinion. This is peer-reviewed and researched extensively. I have two videos that go in depth for two populations, women and LGBTQ members of the population, which I will link below so you can explore the literature that exists in those specific two populations. But I can sum it up with this. Gaming was not created for underrepresented minority populations, and much of gaming culture exists to ensure that these populations continue to struggle against harassment and toxic behavior. So as I discuss the remaining topics in this video, keep in mind that everything negative that I will be talking about is even worse for these populations. In fact, every single paper that I've read for this video, and any other paper that I've read for previous videos that discusses psychology in gaming, at least mentions that toxic behavior is often directed towards underrepresented minorities. You may not agree with everything that I talk about, and you want to discuss possible confounding variables or incorrect interpretations that I may have, and that is completely acceptable. But for this point, you do not get to disagree with me on this. All right. So what is toxic behavior? Who does it? Why is it harmful? What happens as a result of it? A recent paper cited a 2021 work that showed, based on survey results, that 83% of adult online multiplayer gamers have experienced harassment in some form. Multiple other research papers have also reported on an effect called the downward spiral, in which toxic behavior triggers further toxic behavior until we've developed a culture around toxicity, therefore normalizing it. Toxic behavior is most notably reported between players on the same team, most often men, and tends to differ in different cultural contexts. Some research reports that this normalization of toxic behavior in-game often leads to the formation of gaming communities around the idea that they are toxic, harming both the players and the game developers. And that's just an overarching summary. Toxic gaming behavior actually hurts people. Some research shows that targets of harassment and toxic behavior are actually affected in their daily lives. They feel more psychological distress, more isolation, loneliness, depression, and tend to treat other people poorly. So people may think they're just making fun of someone over voice chat for a bad play, but they're really contributing to a whirlwind of depression and suicidal ideation. It's much easier to spit out insults when you can disconnect a player from a person. I've touched on it already, but another recent paper categorizes the specifics of toxic behavior. It often includes verbal abuse over voice or text communication, which is the most common kind reported in peer-reviewed research. Luckily, I think Pokémon UNITE has developed a game that does not rely on voice communication as much and doesn't allow functions like all chat, which may overall reduce the amount of layers that are exposed to this type of behavior. But as I'll talk about soon, it definitely doesn't diminish it. The other major type of toxic behavior involves in-game actions, including spamming or griefing. Being exposed to these behaviors may not seem harmful or hurtful moment to moment, but repeated exposure actually does cause direct harm, according to research. Specifically in MOBA games, toxicity has been reported to be overt, meaning it's not exactly obvious enough to be reported on directly. People may be using verbal abuse in a more underhanded way, causing harm but with no direct way to stop it or figure out how to deal with it. MOBAs also tend to have sneaky toxicity, where players will sabotage or grief teammates, but it makes it look like just a bad play, so it can't really be fixed. In Unite, however, griefing is usually overt because the game itself doesn't really have metrics in place to prevent griefing unless the player is AFK. I have mentioned the normalization of toxicity is a problem, but let's dive deeper into this. The theory of normalized behavior suggests that those who are more approving of a particular behavior will be more likely to engage in that behavior, and also suggests the reverse, that engaging in a particular behavior will reinforce normative beliefs about the acceptability of it. What this means is that when people become okay with the fact that toxicity in gaming exists, they will do the toxic behavior themselves. Then when they do the toxic thing, it continues to normalize the existence of toxicity as a whole. It's a vicious cycle, and nobody is immune to it. I'm not immune to it. I've said and done plenty of toxic things as a Unite player. You're not immune to it either. Bro, my partner, who is the least toxic person that I know, I've heard the most insane things come out of his mouth when he gets on the mic when he's playing Dota 2. It's literally a different person. Nobody is safe. When I mentioned earlier that MOBAs tend to have more sneaky toxicity that can't really be addressed directly in the game, this only adds to the normalization of these behaviors. Game developers drawing lines can be a really difficult thing to do because they can only do it quantitatively, but toxic behavior is often qualitative. For example, someone going AFK for a full 1 minute is where Unite devs have decided to draw the line. I'm actually not sure about the exact timing about AFK, but for the sake of this, let's just say it's 1 minute, 60 seconds. Going AFK for 30 seconds may be a defensive strategy to maintain vision, so that may be too short of a time, so they have to be a little bit more liberal with how much leniency they're going to give. Too strict is worse than not strict enough, especially since the player base is so small. Another few examples. A player going 0-0 with barely any damage, but they're not AFK, can't really be considered griefing, even though in-game it will seem to other players like they are. Maybe they were legitimately trying, but just figured running around the map and scoring is the best option. Double jungling or following a teammate around may be considered a legitimate strategy in some cases, so it's probably griefing, but the devs can't really do anything about it. Since players can be sneaky with their griefing and developers can't realistically crack down on it, the theory of normalized behavior will also apply here too. There's also the idea that much of the behavior is anonymous. The online disinhibition effect is the idea that people feel that the internet gives them a place where they can express themselves to the fullest. This actually comes in two forms. You have benign disinhibition and toxic disinhibition. The former is basically that people feel safe to express personal feelings that they wouldn't express in real life, or maybe engage in acts of kindness. But toxic disinhibition is basically what it sounds like. People can perpetuate toxic or harmful behaviors, such as bad language or threatening others, without feeling like they have to answer for it. Basically, people can separate themselves as a person from themselves as an online user or gamer. According to research, people with higher degrees of online disinhibition tend to exhibit more negative behaviors in online gaming environments. In fact, people with higher degrees of toxic disinhibition can be used as a predictor for toxic gaming behaviors. Another theory that could explain the normalization of toxicity is the theory of moral disengagement, which basically means that people will go against their own morality by separating themselves from the behavior that they're engaging in. Basically, they don't want to feel bad about themselves for doing a bad thing, so they justify it to themselves that it doesn't seem bad. This has recently started being explored in online gaming. For example, players morally disengage from violence by telling themselves that being violent against a virtual character is totally fine, since they're not real, and they would never do that in real life. It's also been found to happen in multiplayer games based on the moral disengagement that their toxic behavior is okay since there are no real consequences. For example, it doesn't matter, it's just a game. In one study, players who thought this way were more likely to engage in toxic behaviors, even if their real-life moral identity was completely different. Basically, this moral disengagement is also used as an excuse to normalize toxicity. Taken together, toxicity is normalized because of the following. We assume toxicity is normal, so it becomes normal. It's hard to draw the line for toxic behavior in MOBAs like Unite, so it goes unpunished. Games provide a safe space for players to be toxic due to anonymity, and people separate their moral identity from how they behave in the game. It's hard to mention toxicity and normalization of toxic behavior without also mentioning the toxicity that exists within the Unite community. The Unite community consists of people who have interest in the game and discuss the game online, but does not exist in-game. I mainly refer to the Twitter community here, but there's also Unite communities on Reddit, Instagram, whatever social media you find yourself on. The normalization of in-game toxicity applies here as well, where people will take to the internet to engage in toxic behaviors we've already talked about, most often flaming other players. The benefit of moving it into the online space is that players flaming other players will be able to receive more validation since more people are exposed to it. Posting game results with a player's name next to it and discussing how that specific player was a bad player, it receives support from people who weren't even in that game. And many of us do it without thinking. We're frustrated with the game's outcome, so we bring it to the internet for validation from others because it makes us feel better for being frustrated about it. But as is the internet, we often don't know who's actually seeing it and who it could affect. I've seen firsthand someone get called out without getting tagged directly, and the attacked player just happens to stumble across the post where they were attacked, or like maybe someone links it to them or something, and then that player ends up getting upset because they were being attacked online. Therefore, the seemingly innocent flame post does end up causing harm. Now, that's not the only toxic thing in the Unite community, believe it or not. In fact, the toxicity of gaming internet culture extends far beyond discussions of in-game activities. We've had it all here in Pokémon UNITE, just like many other games. We've had multiple instances of grooming, racism, misogyny, death threats, stalking and doxing. Entire servers and group chats created for talking poorly about people in the Unite space. And perhaps most prominently, homophobia and transphobia. These types of behaviors become very difficult to manage for the game itself because, once again, drawing the line is a very gray area. The only line that can be definitively drawn by the game itself involves people associated directly with the company or working for them. Basically, competitive players, casters, tournament organizers, people like that. So when someone in one of those positions says something perpetuating harmful rhetoric online, the game has the power to step in and remove that person from their position. But it's hardly ever that easy. Let me illustrate this point with a hypothetical example. A competitive player has engaged with posts on the internet that demonstrate harmful rhetoric against underrepresented minority populations. However, they didn't say anything harmful themselves, and have defaulted to claims like, I didn't realize it was that bad, and they're basically playing dumb about it. They even claim that they went ahead and talked to the people that they hurt directly and apologized to them, and won't do it again. For me personally, this is enough still to dissociate completely from that person, but that's also just me. I mean, it's halfway through the season, Unite banning them in the middle of the season when it can't necessarily be proven that they were being toxic would effectively screw over their teammates. Some people may say that the teammates deserve it for interacting with someone who behaves in this way. But then that becomes even more of a gray area because how many degrees of separation until we stop? What about the people who aren't their teammates but have been on a team with them before? What about friends of the teammates who don't necessarily like the player under accusation but want to defend the teammates who haven't actually done anything wrong? Now we've moved past what professional Pokemon Unite can do and moved into what the community can do. On the internet, it becomes so much more than finding a quantitative way to limit toxic behavior because everyone has a different opinion on how these types of things should be handled. And this is a very basic, easy to explain hypothetical, example, as compared to some of the things that have happened in this community. I can only imagine what happens in other gaming communities if the constant claim that I hear is that Unite is one of the least toxic MOBAs. Basically, the game itself just has to back off from these types of situations, leaving it up to the online community to figure out how they want to handle it. So now we get into our final topic, which is handling toxic behavior. Generally, this can be summed up with the following. You can't control the behavior, you can only control how you react to it. Toxic behavior will continue to happen, in-game, outside of game, in the Unite community. There are some god-awful people who play the same video games as you, and it sucks that the only thing you can realistically do about it is control your own reaction. You can demand accountability. You can flame them right back. You can go to your group chat and complain about how these players are the worst and how dare they hurt you, but the behavior won't stop. I mean, I've done all three of these things to handle toxic behavior, and especially when it comes to things like the hypothetical example. But realistically, what does that do? What does reacting strongly do? I can't answer that. Some believe reacting with just as much intensity as the toxic person will result in positive change. Some believe that ignoring the toxic behavior or laughing it off is more likely to result in positive change. Historically, the answer seems to be a little bit of both. You can win with either approach, you can lose with either approach. Let's take a look at an example of toxicity towards me and how I dealt with it. I feel insane.
Yeah. As you should.
Chomp is a little chompable. He is quite chompable, I must say.
No way!
Oh. Did they ult?
Meow ulted.
Oh, okay. I'll accept it.
And I gotta pass it. Well, she died again, so.
He's gonna check me out next.
So Garchomp and Meow have ulted.
Cool. He's thanking? What? That was awesome for us.
That group ready to go too?
Mean look me, yeah.
I wasted that. Whoa! Whoa! Oh, Ho-Oh died without ult. Ouch.
Uh-oh. Oh, they're just doing it. I can't go anywhere.
Oh.
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Be careful to lose that. Like,
GG.
That's a G.
Juan, I just want to say, Sylvia, on your go delete the game.
Never mind. I take back my GG.
Husky Star TDV, go yourself.
You're a pathetic sack of Oh no, you're a fucking ugly fat. No one watches your and if they do, they know you suck.
Alright,
Delete
yeah.
the game,
Buddy.
get a real job.
What the? What do I do with that?
Oh no, I don't know.
What am I supposed to do with that?
108k damage.
Look how hard I carried! Brother.
I don't know.
That was my 1400 game, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Last fight at bottom, I didn't go to. Because that's a bait fight. So I just farmed. And I could have gone to that fight. They were mad because I didn't go to that fight.
Got 2 ults out of them for it, so
But
like,
I think that fight was great because they used 2 of their Unite moves. So they were mad at me for that. Which, I get it. Like, if I was in that fight and then one of my teammates wasn't there, I'd be like, oh my god, my whatever isn't there. But I don't like going to that fight because it's a bait. And if we all die there, then that's really, like, that's really bad if we all die there. We need at least someone to die there.
and also
They get free Ray. Yeah, someone said they called me slurs. They called me slurs.
They did, and like the report didn't go through.
No, it wouldn't. I just don't like that fight. Slurvion, not Slurvion. Chat's been slurred. I'm sorry to subject chat to this. So I was streaming during this, obviously, and you could see my chat kind of going off while all of this was happening, and I just kind of laughed it off. I expected, based on the insults hurled towards me, that these people knew what I looked like, so it was possible, fairly likely, that they were in my stream currently and could see my reaction. So in that moment, I wanted to show them that this was just content for me, and I don't really care. Is that the right way of handling it? I don't know. I highly doubt it results in them being less toxic in the future, though. In another paper, qualitative interviews were conducted with multiple gamers who discussed their own strategies for handling toxicity. For female gamers specifically, they often have to avoid using voice chat or try to hide their gender to avoid harassment. Sometimes these players will end up perpetuating toxic behavior themselves when they try to justify the toxicity. For example, this player's culture probably doesn't allow them to be around women much, so they don't know how to talk to me is all. Players also tend to deal with it using coping strategies like sarcasm, avoidance, ignoring it, playing only with people they trust, not caring or suppressing emotions, laughing it off, or in some cases even playing along. Clearly I employed the laughing it off strategy, though it doesn't really seem like a strategy. I feel like maybe the best one, is to sit down face-to-face with these people in a room and show them peer-reviewed sources and explain to them why this behavior is wrong. But at the same time, you know it won't do anything. Generally, we go with what makes us feel best about ourselves, because as I said, that's the only real thing we have control over. So let's discuss what we've talked about today. Players in UNITE are toxic. This behavior is harmful, but it's normalized because we feel like that's just the way it is. Not only is UNITE toxic, the UNITE community is also toxic, and a lot of people suck. Unfortunately, there's no right way to deal with toxicity, but you try. I mean, we're kind of ending on a low note here, but let's look on the bright side. Research is pretty cool for telling us this stuff, and I didn't even have math this time. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're thinking of being toxic, don't. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you all next time. Bye!